How's it going, Woodland? This is Mr. Rhoten. I'm going to be reading you chapter 16 from the book One Crazy Summer. The chapter is titled Big Red S. That night, Fern complained about her aching stomach. She meowed and howled and turned in her sleep. Go sit on the toilet, I told her. She clung to my side, meowing and howling. Vanetta yelled, Quit it, Fern. I can't sleep. I paid her no mind, and neither did Fern. If Fern couldn't sleep, then we all couldn't sleep. So too bad for Vanetta and too bad for me. I just let Fern carry on while I rubbed her stomach. It took a while, but she finally fell into sleep. Before we left for the center in the morning, I asked Cecil for food money for tonight's dinner. If I could hold on to $200 over 3,000 miles, I could hold on to a $10 bill for a few hours. Cecil didn't bother with any questions. She gave me the $10 bill and the door key so we wouldn't have to get up. She wouldn't have to get up to let us in. I think anyone standing at the front door made her jumpy. Even when we ate on the floor in the living room, I'd catch her eyes shift to the door when she heard a noise. Maybe she thought the Panthers were coming back to bother her for more ink and paper. I was glad Cecil handed over the money without fuss or questions. That saved me from lying about getting shrimp lo mein when I had no intention of going to Ming's. Vanetta, Fern, and I had eaten our last plate of shrimp lo mein and egg rolls for the rest of our crazy summer. Shrimp and noodles, swimming in sauce, and deep-fried egg rolls had taken their toll on us. Not that mean Lady Ming would cry for her 3 colored girls. She had other customers to yell at. All day long at the center, I could think of nothing else but a home-cooked meal. We marched to the Safeway store after playing in the park for an hour. My shopping list was burned into my brain. I picked up 1 head of cabbage, 17 cents, 1 onion, 8 cents, 2 potatoes, 23 cents, 1 package of chicken thighs, and 1 package of wings, $1.47. The price of the chicken would have been thievery of the highest kind, according to Big Ma, who raised chickens down in Alabama and had only to go pull one up by its neck, kill it, pluck it, clean it, and fry it. Lastly, but most important, I dropped a can of stewed prunes into our shopping basket, 49 cents. There was plenty of money left over to call Pa and talk for as long as we wanted. Vanetta and Fern pouted as the groceries went into the basket. There were even a couple of aw shucks and finger snapping as our dinner was placed in the cashier's counter. All of the snipping between Vanetta and Fern over Miss Patty Cake was now aimed at their new enemies, the real food that we would eat until we returned to Brooklyn and me. I paid for the groceries and put the change in my pocket. I'd give Cecil the dollar bills and keep the coins for our telephone call to Papa. Why can't we have pizza? Vanetta moaned. Or shrimp lo mein? Because, I said, enjoying my role as their enemy and big sister, that's not food for everyday eating. I held up the brown paper Safeway bag with its big red S printed smack in the center. This is. Big Ma would have been proud of me, but also angry that I allowed it to come to this. I'm sure she expected this kind of living from Cecil. For me, she expected better. Phooey. Double phooey. They could phooey all night long for all I cared, Vanetta said. I hope you know she won't let you cook that. Not in her kitchen, Fern said. So, I said. Then she'll cook it in her kitchen. Papa's voice poured out of my mouth like warm, steady tap water. When I put the key in the door, I said, Go wash your face and hands real good. Play Go Fish until I call you for supper. Cecil wasn't in the living room, which meant she was in her kitchen. I didn't want Vanetta and Fern to see how afraid I was of Cecil. I thought of how she planted her body between us and her kitchen door, daring us to take one step further. That she'd rather let Fern dry up of thirst than give her a glass of water with ice. I thought about how crazy Cecil was, and that I didn't know her or what she would do next. Now that I could smell the cabbage and onion from the brown paper bag, I lost that feeling of being calm and brave like Papa. I didn't dare walk in, so I called to her, Cecil. It didn't occur to me to use her poet name, Zila, to maybe soften her up, but that name didn't feel right coming out of my mouth. I dreaded this moment, dreaded the thought of her swinging the kitchen door open and seeing me with a bag of uncooked food. There was no putting it off. I called to her again, this time louder. Cecil! Her hand slapped against the counter or tabletop, good and hard. In a few stomps, the door swung open and she was looking down at me. I took a step back and hugged the bag. I have to cook supper. She stared down at me and didn't speak. I didn't know what to do or say, so I took the change out of my pocket, all of it, and held it out to her. She took it, dropped it into her pants pocket. Maintained her long, hard stare. If that was supposed to make me feel afraid, stupid, and small, it worked. Then she spoke. Why don't you go to Ming's or Shabazz? We have Shabazz in Brooklyn, the fish and bean pie place run by the black Muslims. I found my voice and said, "We can't have takeout every day. Vanetta and Fern can't stomach it. You can't come in my kitchen making a mess. This is my workplace. I don't need you in here turning things upside down." I said, "I don't make messes," without a lack of sass. I spoke the plain truth. I'd never make a mess in my life, not even for the fun of it. Cecil went stomping and cursing back into the kitchen. "No one told y'all to come out here. No one wants you here making a mess, stopping my work." I stood outside the kitchen with the Safeway bag held tight to my chest. I'm sure the Safeway S was in the same spot as the Superman's big red S was sewn into his costume. I felt right about looking out for my sisters, but I didn't feel brave. All the same, I didn't want Vanetta and Vern to see me standing there like a scared dummy holding a bag of groceries. Cecil pushed the door open. "Get a speck of grease on my work, you hear?" I knew better than to wait for a nicer invitation and walked inside Cecil's kitchen. It was larger than our kitchen back home. Hers had both the cooking area and the eating area, which hadn't been set up for eating. There was a long table, only one chair, hers, and what I figured was her printing machine on top of the table. I didn't want to be caught gawking at her and her stuff. I went straight to the sink and started stripping the onion, washing the cabbage, washing potatoes, washing the chicken parts until I could figure out what to do next without having to ask Cecil a thing. She hovered over her machinery, grunting and cursing. Then she got up, pulled open a drawer, and threw a potato peeler and a knife in the sink. The knife just missed my hand. She didn't look once, but said, "Don't go cutting off your fingers. There's no money to take you to the hospital." I felt her watching me at work. Thanks to Big Ma, I could skin a potato with a paring knife without wasting a scrap of white potato. I could cut up a whole fryer too, even though this time I didn't have to. Cecil grunted. "What are you going to do to that chicken?" I said. "Bake it." "Frying's faster," she said. I pointed to her papers. Grease. Papa's easy voice just slid right out of me, warm and steady. I could feel myself coming back, my voice, my steadiness. "What are you going to do with the potatoes?" "Boil them with cabbage and onion." There was something about being here with her in the kitchen. I knew what it was. I had a flash of us, quiet and in the kitchen, pencil tapping and her voice chanting. I blinked at that flash away. I didn't have time to be pulled into a daydream. I kept doing what I was doing, and then I pressed my luck and asked her for some fat back. Another grunt. "No fat back. No salt pork. No pig of any kind in my kitchen." I shook my head. People in Oakland were touchy about pigs. They were touchy about the pig on their plates and the pigs, as Crazy Kelvin called them in the police cars. Back in Brooklyn, Big Ma wouldn't stand for cooking without pork on a Sunday. I couldn't even imagine Cecil and Big Ma sharing a kitchen or living in the same house. Since there was no pork, I used what Cecil had: butter, salt, and pepper, plus the onion. It didn't smell like Big Ma's kitchen in Brooklyn, but it was the aroma of real food cooking. Now that I had our dinner underway, I wanted to take in Cecil's place of work, see what she was doing, hovering over her machine quietly, carefully. From where I stood, stealing glances, it seemed like she was laying down puzzle pieces, picking up one piece in something and laying it carefully down on her equipment, picking up another piece and laying it down. Then she'd study the pieces, just the piece she had completed. She had pulled herself into her puzzle, laying, and I'd forgotten that I was there. I could see why Vonetta and Fern were not allowed inside Cecil's kitchen. Cecil was fixed in prayer. I was allowed to be there, but I didn't dare clear my throat, let alone ask her to show me what she was doing. Vonetta and Fern didn't have the sense to be quiet. We spread the tablecloth on the floor and sat cross-legged as if we were eating Mean Lady Ming's takeout or fried fish from Shabazz. While Vonetta and Fern ate begrudgingly, Cecil cleaned her plate and left 3 blanched chicken bones. "This didn't taste like Big Ma's," Vonetta said. "Surely don't," Vern followed. "We should have got pizza, or shrimp lo mein." Cecil reached into Vonetta's plate and took the thigh that Vonetta had left. To me, she said, "That's gratitude for you." I didn't care that they were ungrateful, I told my sisters. "Get used to eating like this." Vonetta said, "I'm going to tell Big Ma and Papa." To them I said, "Tell." When we were done, Cecil handed me every plate, after she'd eaten whatever Vonetta and Fern had left. "You started this mess, Delphine. You clean every dish and spoon." We had eaten with forks, but I wasn't about to correct her. I just took the forks while Vonetta and Fern disappeared into our room. At least I could look Pa in the eye and say, "Yes, Pa, I did what you said. I looked out for my sisters. At least I got Cecil to let me into her kitchen." Then she added, "And don't expect no help from me." I said, "I don't mind." She gave another and a head shake. We're trying to break yokes. You're trying to make one for yourself. If you know what I know, seen what I've seen, you wouldn't be so quick to pull the plow. I sort of knew what she meant, but someone had to look out for Vernon, Vonetta, and Fern while we were here. I stacked the plates in the sink and ran the hot water. It wouldn't kill you to be selfish, Stephanie, she said, and moved me out of the way to wash her hands. Then she went back to praying over her puzzle pieces.